Hi. Uh, good afternoon all. Thank you for joining in person as well as online. For this important topic, the title is Transfer of Budgetary Resources to States. Is it North versus South, or is it North and South? By Professor Pinaki Chakraborty, and in conversation with him will be Dr. Janakraj. The context of today's topic emanates from the fundamental objective of the Finance Commission, which is to restore the vertical balance between the union and the states and horizontal balance amongst the states. And I think it is this critical issue, which Professor Pinaki Chakraborty will be highlighting over the due course of time. And as we know, that Finance Commission is a constitutional body which was established under the Article 280 of the Constitution, and it is set up every 5 years since then. Now, let me now introduce the speaker of the day, Professor Pinaki Chakraborty, who is the Vice Chairperson of the Institute of Development Studies, Jaipur, and is also a visiting distinguished professor at the National Institute for Public Finance and Policy. Before this, he was also the director and professor at NIPFP. He has held several important positions and contributed extensively in shaping the discourse of fiscal federalism at the union as well as at the state level. He served as the member of the Advisory Council to the 15th Finance Commission of India and economic advisor to the 14th Finance Commission. He was also the member secretary of the Committee on the Fiscal Statistics appointed by the National Statistical Commission. Additionally, he was also the chair of the Kerala Public Expenditure Review Committee. In addition to the research and policy level positions which he has taken, he also used to teach at various places, and then he also had visiting positions at the Department of Economics in the University of Ottawa, the University of Carleton, Center for Development Studies, Trivandrum, and also had taught at IGIDR, Mumbai. He has authored 3 books, one of which I also was privileged enough to read, and that was The GST in India, A Simple Tax Structure, a Simple Tax in a Complex Federal Structure, published by Orient Black Swan, and this was in 2019. Before that, he has also co-authored 2 books. The first one is Social Sector in Decentralized Economy, India in the Era of Globalization, published by CUP and in 2016, and in 2014, State Level Reforms, Growth and Development in Indian States. Thank you very much, sir, for coming here and making the time. Let me now also introduce Dr. Janakraj, who's my colleague, and he's also the senior fellow and leads the macroeconomic segment in growth finance and development vertical at the CSEP. He works specifically on the fiscal federalism in health sector, climate finance, and on also the reforms of the multilateral development banks. He is currently also a member of JM Financial Center for Financial Research of IIM Udaipur. He has nearly 4 decades of experience working with the Reserve Bank of India, IMF, and Ministry of Finance. He served as an executive director in the RBI and as a member of its Statutory Monetary Policy Committee. He has also served as a principal advisor of the Monetary Policy Department and the International Department of the RBI, and headed its Department of Economic Policy and Research. At the IMF, he was the senior advisor to the executive director for Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, and Sri Lanka. He has served as an RBI nominee director on the governing body of the Bombay Stock Exchange and as a senior consultant in the Department of Financial Services, Ministry of Finance. Thank you very much, sir, for kindly agreeing. With that, I think I'd like to call Professor Pinaki Chakraborty for his address.
Thank you, Rajat, Professor Janakraj, Professor Louis Bandari, Professor Om Mathur, distinguished friends and participants. I'm really very happy to be here, and thank you for this invitation to talk about my recent work on transfer of budgetary resources. This is something which I'm currently working on, and some of the major findings of this work has been published in the India Forum recently. And today's lecture is based on what has already been published and some of the work I have done post the publication of that article. So I just said this issue in the context. I think the context here is, there was this discussions about, denial of fair share of resources to the rich and prosperous regions of the country. And this was basically based on a principle of understanding that these states are more efficient and in turn should be provided more resources, basically award for efficiency, if I put it that way. Secondly, the states which are really not prosperous, they have been getting transfers, that's the argument, and yet they haven't prospered really well. So in that case, should there be a reverse kind of should there be a redistribution of transfer to a level which is kind of unsustainable? That's the kind of argument that was there, and in that context, I thought we should look at what has happened in the as far as center budgetary transfer is concerned. I am not going into the data. I'll talk from my written notes and the first draft of the larger article. So if we talk about redistribution of resources, I just give you a big picture, and the big picture here is you mentioned about finance commission, Rajat. I think finance commission transfer is part of the kind of is part of the budgetary transfer. So budgetary transfer has again 4 components, I would say. The first one is, of course, the finance commission transfer, which is something like 70% of the transfer. So it's a large part of the total transfer that goes to the states, including the local governments. And then you have got grants, and these grants are like centrally sponsored schemes. So we keep hearing about MGNREGA, PMGSY, National Health Mission, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. Everything is part of that component, which is CSS or central sector scheme. And then the third component is a borrowing, where it's not a transfer, but states have to take permission from the center to borrow as per the act, the FRBM Act mandate legislated by the state. So this is where the total regulation of budgetary transfer comes. One is the borrowing, other is finance commission transfer, then there is various central grants. So in this context, if we look at just the finance commission transfer, I am giving you the big picture, finance commission transfer and central grants together, it's around 6% of GDP. Now, if we look at this as total government expenditure, that means taking center and states together, it's around roughly 24% of GDP. So 6% actually goes to the states. Now, all the debate that we see is how this 6% of GDP should be distributed, how much the rich states should get, how much the middle income states should get, how much the poorer states should get. And there the question of efficiency and equity comes in, where the states who are prosperous, they are saying that we should get more than what we have been getting. So in this context, let me just raise 3 issues. One is budgetary transfer the only way to look at financial flows to the states? That's the first question, because it's not the only transfer that goes to the states. So there are many other transfer that goes, and there are 5 different forms of transfer which is outside the budget. One is commercial bank credits. So now if we look at the commercial bank credit flow across states, you would see that 86% of the commercial bank credit goes to 6 or 7 most prosperous states of the country. And that's not part of the budgetary flow. It's part of the process of private sector investment growth, etc., prosperity, everything together. So in other words, if we look at credit deposit ratio, you will see the credit deposit ratio is very low in poorer states. That means the large part of the deposit in the poorer regions actually goes back to the prosperous regions of the country. And then if we look at central sector investment, So central government, because central government expenditure is around 12% of GDP, to 11 to 12% of GDP. That also gets spent somewhere within the country. And we did a study for the 13th Finance Commission, bit dated, but I would say that these transfers are also highly regressive, in the sense that most of it actually flows to the prosperous regions of the country, given their nature. So for example, if we say petroleum subsidies, who benefits out of petroleum subsidy most? It is the prosperous region, because the petrol consumption is high there. So I'm just giving an example. Similarly, if we look at subsidies for, say, fertilizer subsidy, I think its distribution is also very regressive. Prosperous region gets more subsidies. So then we have got foreign direct investment. We do not have an idea about state-wise foreign direct investment. It's very difficult to get. And then the fourth flow that we are talking about is externally aided projects. So these 4 and 5 components, if we take together, and if we look budgetary component on the other side, my argument in this paper is that the budgetary component constitutes a very small proportion of the total financial flows to the richer regions of the country. So in other words, if we are saying that budgetary transfer is actually creating inequity, I would say no, it is not. Actually, it is the non-budgetary financial flow which actually is responsible for the high growth that you see in the prosperous regions of the country. Now, in such a situation, if we say that budgetary flow also should become more efficiency driven, it has got its own economic implications and social implications, development implications. So in such a situation, should we really be talking about, efficiency should be getting more weightage compared to equity? I think the issue is extremely complex, and we do not really know the answer. So the idea is to look for some of these concerns of the southern states. Now, if we look at the question of unfairness in transfer. So what is the argument? This started with a question in the parliament, and that was on 5th of December 2023, so 5-6 months back. It was question number 232, unstarred question, and this was in the Rajya Sabha. So, and which provided state-wise information of collection of various taxes. So if we look at collection of various taxes, collection means source of collection, right? So if I say that Tata's pay taxes, I'm just giving an example, pay taxes from Kolkata. So does that mean that, the income is generated in Kolkata? No, right? So they have pan-India income. So if their head office is in Kolkata, they may be paying the taxes from there. So collection means is a source from where the tax is collected or the return is filed, right? So collection of taxes, if we look at, and it shows that some of the most prosperous regions of the country, so 6-7 states contribute very significantly to the total collection of, say, corporate income tax or personal income tax. So essence of the argument made by some of the southern states based on these numbers seem to suggest that since they contribute more to the national pool of taxes, they should be receiving more than what they receive now as devolution. So devolution of taxes. Now, if we think this is the right argument, then operationalizing this proposition would require an indicator which would actually say that origin of tax is given some weightage in the devolution formula of the Finance Commission. So I started looking at old Finance Commission report, and I started looking at it from the first Finance Commission report. So from the first to the 10th Finance Commission, only 2 taxes were devolved to the states. That was union excise duty and the income tax. Union excise duty came later. The first, it was only income tax. Now, and collection was given a weightage. So it is not something new that the southern states are demanding. So collection was there as an indicator of devolution to the states from the first to the 9th Finance Commission. But collection, so that means if 100 rupees is collected and 10% weightage is given to the collection, that means 10% of that collection should go back to the state, the state of origin. So, but in the 10th Finance Commission, and the timing is very important, that is 94-95, when India liberalized, and 10th Finance Commission had said that there is nothing called locally originating income, because the economy got integrated, liberalization has happened, factor movement actually is seamless. So in such a situation, actually we cannot really say that origin of collection, look, there is nothing called a locally originated income. That's the argument they made. And if you give me 1 minute time, I just say what they have said. I think the argument they have made that there is no concept of locally originated income, and if there is no question of having a locally originated income, we really cannot have a collection as an indicator of devolution. So collection was dropped by the 10th Finance Commission. So now collection was dropped by the 10th Finance Commission, and then 10th Finance Commission was 94-95, so today we are in the 16th Finance Commission, so 30 years have passed, collection has never come back as a criteria for devolution. So there is a reason why. Now if we compare India of 94-95 and India of 2024-25, if we look at data on migration across census, two census you will get, 91, 2001 and 2011, migration has increased. If we look at the economic survey a couple of years back, there was some number on migration which also said that there has been a significant increase in migration, interstate migration. Two major reforms have happened in direct and indirect taxes. One was VAT, one was GST. GST actually talked about one nation, one tax, and seamless movement of goods and services, business integrations, etc. So I think the integration issue, the locally or there is no concept of local income, has become really more important now compared to what it was say 30 years back. Of course, I am not talking about agricultural income. You cannot have an agricultural income which is not locally originated. And there the agricultural it is about what I am talking about. Locally originating income is manufacturing and services. So in such a situation, I think the concept of locally originated income is completely irrelevant. So if the concept of locally originating income is completely irrelevant, and if we are talking about a common market, bringing collection is going to actually make the transfer system more regressive. That's the first issue that I highlight in this paper and my work. And there are data that is that I don't have it now, but it clearly shows that. That's the first point. Second issue that I wanted to highlight is when we are talking about collection and it becomes more regressive, then the question is, has the transfer system become more regressive without collection? That's the second question to ask. Even if we haven't used collection as an indicator, what have we used? We have used income distance. So income distance is, I think, I'll just briefly talk about income distance. So income distance is, the highest per capita income states, for example, if we take Haryana, and the lowest per capita income states, say Bihar, and if the income distance between Bihar and Haryana is, say, X, and that X is given some weightage and very high weightage in the devolution formula. That means Bihar would get more money compared to, say, Haryana, or the state next to Haryana, say Himachal. Now, if we look at 11th Finance Commission report, 11th Finance Commission had given income distance. That means this most progressive component of transfer. So the more poor you are in per capita income term, more money you get from the center as tax devolution. So that was given 62.5% weightage. Now, if we look at the 15th Finance Commission report, the income distance weightage is 45%. That means over the year, the distance of income and its weightage in the devolution formula has declined. To say that it's only driven by equity is a myth. It hasn't. So if the income distance over time has declined, does that mean Finance Commission is not concerned about equity? Or Finance Commission has deliberately reduced the share of poorer states and made the system more unequal? I think that would be a very unfair statement to make. Because one of the reasons why collection could, income distance could not be given higher share was because if income distance continued at 62.5%, as was the case in the case of 11th Finance Commission, the kind of redistribution that would have taken place in the last 25 years would have created huge fiscal instability for the richer states, because their deficit would have gone up, they would have got much less money compared to what they're getting now. So Finance Commission actually considered fiscal stability also as an important factor in determining the devolution of taxes. It's not that Finance Commission was not concerned about the fiscal issues of the richer or prosperous regions of the country. Finance Commission also had a constraint that the system can really afford only this much level of fiscal equity, because otherwise there will be a significant reduction in flow of resources to the prosperous region. So it has reduced from 62.5 to 45%. Now, which replaced this less redistribution? It was replaced by very neutral indicators of need, like area started getting increasing weightage. So area got important weightage. Its share has increased in the overall devolution. The other thing which got more weightage was population. So the population is a neutral indicator of need. I am sitting in Delhi, my fiscal need, say for a hospital, is very low compared to a person who is residing in, say, Arunachal Pradesh. The medical services are different. Quality of medical services, both public and private, are very different. So if we put per capita income, which is per capita transfer, that means population as an indicator of devolution, we are not actually differentiating between the fiscal need of a person residing in a prosperous region and the fiscal need of a person who is residing in a less prosperous region in economic terms. So more neutral indicators actually have replaced more progressive indicators like income distance. So in such a situation, I would say this transformation in the Finance Commission approach or incremental approach towards more more neutral indicators of devolution is to address the issue of fiscal stability of the prosperous region. That's the second hypothesis I have. And if we look at the data, you would see another important development. And that data says that in the last 30 years, that means 6th Finance Commission, if we look at the devolution share of bottom 10 states have actually remained stagnant at around 60% of the total devolution. So it's very progressive. Despite reduction in the devolution income distance formula, the population, the total transfer still goes to the states in the form of tax devolution is 60%. So bottom 10, 12 states. But if we look at the richer states, their share in the total devolution has declined from around 10% to 8%. And we are talking about something like 13 lakh crore per year. So say 2 percentage point decline is a significant amount of money. And if we look at who benefited out of this redistribution, so there is a limit to the redistribution because bottom 10, 12 states share is at a 60%, high income state share is going down. Now what is happening is that in the process, the states who benefited most are the middle income states. Middle income states are also very vocal. And some of the middle income states actually have improved their per capita income ranking. And classic example is Kerala. Kerala is, I think, the third highest per capita income state. Tamil Nadu, Karnataka. So their income ranking has significantly increased, and that is one of the reasons why there has been a significant decline in devolution. Last point on devolution I would like to say is, how much time do I have? Okay, so last point that I want to say on devolution is, if we look at share of states, the states that had seen secular decline in their devolution in the last 4-5 Finance Commission will be Tamil Nadu, then you will have Karnataka, Kerala, also Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. So that's why I say it's not north versus south, it's also north and south. So Bihar and UP's population share will be total population in absolute number will be around 30 to 35 crores, and then if we look at their share in the total devolution, it has also declined. So when I say that equity has a limit because you have to take care of the fiscal stability issue, and when you are talking about fiscal stability issue, you actually see that redistribution also happened from the poorer regions to the more prosperous regions in terms of devolution. To say that rich is financing the poorer regions, I think factually is not correct. It's actually wrong. So the second issue is about revenue deficit grant. I think I'll just talk about revenue deficit grant. When we talk about devolution, devolution has two components. One is your tax devolution. Other is if a state is still in deficit after giving tax devolution, a state is given a revenue deficit grant. So when you are giving a revenue deficit grant, it's like tax devolution because it's untied. So if I say that fiscal devolution to the state is X%, after X% you have 100 crore deficit, 100 crore deficit is given as a grant, Article 275(1) grant. So this is a constitutional provision. So this is untied grant. So we just cannot say that devolution has declined. So you have, unless we look at what has happened to revenue deficit grant. So and if we look at the revenue deficit grant that state like Kerala has received, actually the devolution hasn't declined as much as the devolution share shows. So I think we have to look at both revenue deficit and tax devolution together. Now if we are talking about, now let me come to the issue of equalization of expenditure and reducing fiscal inequality. Now I was looking at data, per capita expenditure data on development, social and economic services, and if we look at social and economic services, per capita development expenditure difference in India is huge. Bihar's per capita expenditure on development, social and economic services together, is only around 50% of the all state development spending. I am not comparing Bihar's expenditure with Kerala, maybe it is 90% different. The difference will be 90%. So when we are talking about inequality in development spending, and we are talking about a redistribution which has got its limit at 60%, we are actually doing a constraint optimization. We are not going to get a complete fiscal equalization given the level of overall resources that we have, because otherwise there will be macro instability because center would not have any money. So there is a limit how much we can give. So in such a situation, we are doing a constraint optimization, and if that redistribution doesn't happen, if that redistribution does not happen where it is now, I think there will be large-scale migration from the regions which provided low level of public services because of their fiscal inequality. As I said, Bihar's per capita development spending is only 50% of what all state average is, and that migration itself can itself be very inefficient. So we really cannot say that migration will continue, and it is going to have it is natural equalizer to the extent that we have an understanding of how it is naturally equalizing. It is equalizing in both ways. It's not an equalization, is not one way process. Today if we say somebody is migrating to a prosperous region and sending money transfer to his back home to the origin state, it's an equalizer, yes, but at the same time there is no study in India yet which actually tell how migration has kept the labor cost low and added to the value added in the richer region. So we have no idea. So if we estimate that, I think we'll find an extremely unequal system, and that inequality I think has accentuated significantly post-liberalization. So we need a system which can address this level of inequality, and it is not going to happen. If we just talk about finance commission transfer. Last but not the least, I think what we haven't discussed, and it is completely outside the radar of public policy debate, is the issue of equalization, which is only restricted to revenue expenditure. Because all the grants, all the transfers that we are talking about, it actually talks about equalizing revenue expenditure. It does not talk about equalization of capital expenditure. Capital expenditure is determined by the level of borrowing. So if a state is allowed to borrow up to 3% of GDP, and if a state doesn't have a revenue surplus, I assume that revenue surplus is zero, revenue deficit is zero, then 3% is the threshold of your capital expenditure. So when there is no capital expenditure equalization and revenue expenditure equalization is limited to, certain social services, because most of the revenue expenditure is expenditure on education, health, and to an extent rural development. So we are actually not talking about balanced regional development. So there has to be some instrument which actually can speed up capital expenditure at the in less prosperous regions of the country. And in that context, I would like to draw your attention to the recent changes in the central government's policy, where they started doing this on lending free interest-free loans to the states. So, and this started as a part of COVID stimulus. Initially, it was 10,000 crore. Now it has become 1,30,000 crore. I think that, and that is given based on the devolution formula of the Finance Commission. So there is a lot of capital flowing to the poorer regions of the country. But I think the kitty is very small. 1,30,000 crore is something like 0.3% of GDP. I think that level of capital expenditure equalization is not enough. I think we need to have a larger capital grant to the states based on a flexible design, because the capital expenditure need of prosperous region and capital expenditure need of poorer region will be very different. I think we need to have a capital grant fund mechanism to address the level of fiscal inequality that we have and which has got accentuated over time. So that's the broad idea of what I wanted to speak, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
For those insightful words. Now I would request Dr. Janakraj to kindly take it forward.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Chakraborty, for this wonderful presentation. It was very thought-provoking. 2-3 points which you have made in your presentation, I will just touch upon. It's not only the resource transfers from the Finance Commission, but also other factors which matter a lot, because if you're getting more credit, you are then developing fast, and then you have higher income, and that goes into then funds transfers. That's a very important point you made. And you also made another important point. It comes out very clearly from your presentation. It's not north versus south. It's basically north and south, because we have seen the top states which have highest per capita, they are getting less transfers from the Finance Commission, and also the lowest states. You made the point very well that it's basically middle income states which have got the larger share, I would say. But the issue still remains, why the states are feeling so much squeezed, like they feel they get more resources because they also have expenditure. Because if you look at the data which I just had a glance, states have 60% of expenditure, where they have resources only up to 40%. So there is a mismatch, which of course comes through vertical transfers. I'm just wondering whether this so much squeeze which some states are feeling, is it to do with the vertical transfers, whether vertical transfers are not enough? Let me refer particularly to cesses and surcharges. That amount has increased very significantly in the last 10 years or so, from something like 70,000 crore to 5 lakh crore or so. And this is not a part of divisible pool. Had it been a part of divisible pool, then perhaps all states would have got more money. How do you respond to this point? Yeah.
Shall I?
Sure, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think there are two issues. I think, yes, the share of divisible pool actually has declined because of the continuous and steady increase in cess and surcharges. So non-divisible pool has increased. I also add to this, how structural changes in the economy actually resulted in windfall gain in non-tax revenues for the center. Say 20 years back, we never had an idea there will be a 2G spectrum auction and you are going to get non-tax revenues. Or a 5G spectrum, you are going to not. These are new sources of revenues, and it's part of the non-divisible pool. Now cess and surcharges have also increased. So in that context, I think two issues become very relevant. One is a part of the cess and surcharges actually go to the states to finance the centrally sponsored schemes. So if the cess and surcharges are not there, it has been completely eliminated, and it becomes part of the divisible pool. That means you are taxing, not imposing cess. So if you tax, it will become part of the divisible pool. So and it goes to the states. Then you also have to talk about what will be the sharing of formula of centrally sponsored. It will then be 60-40 or something else. I think that issue becomes then very relevant. So it is linked to the restructuring of CSS. I think there is an incentive to finance large CSS because you can impose cess and surcharges. I think there needs to be a restructuring of CSS. CSS is something like 4 lakh crore rupees, so 3 lakh plus. So it's a large sum of money, and it's actually when there is a 60-40 devolution sharing formula, calling it as CSS also is not fair, because states are also putting 40% of their money into it. So I think, and the CSS also is this, generally states say that one size fits all do not apply because some states have differential fiscal needs. I think CSS needs to be reformed. I think there is a need to restructure CSS so that absorption is better and it actually meets the specific need of states. Now on the non-divisible pool, how much cess and surcharges is financing centers' expenditure and not providing resources to the state is also an issue that needs to be discussed, quantified, and evidence is generated. I think we haven't done that. I think that is very important. Last point, I would say that this feeling of not having enough resources. I think if you look at data, two things have happened after COVID, and after COVID it's new normal. One is states' deficits have gone up in the revenue account, but their capital account is reduced. The capital account expenditure hasn't really increased because the fiscal deficit is at 3.5. So that is one development. So a lot of states actually are having revenue, large states, and they are saying that more money is required to finance it. So it is also about state level expenditure efficiency that has changed after COVID. And last issue is with respect to borrowing. When we talk about squeeze, I think states are also finding innovative ways to encourage off-budget borrowing, because FRBM puts a hard budget constraint on their finances. I think that is where, now that we are debt to GDP ratio at 27, 25, 8%, and FRBM review committee in 2018 said that it should come down to 20% for the states by 22-23. We are way off the mark. I think it is very important that we talk about what kind of flexibility or what kind of readjustment in the fiscal space required at the state and the union level to bring the state debt to GDP ratio in the medium term to at least 25%.
Okay. Now you raise the issue of this centrally sponsored scheme. If you recall, the 14th Finance Commission had recommended that it had actually. You raised the issue of centrally sponsored scheme. If you recall, that 14th Finance Commission had expressed concerns with the centrally sponsored schemes, and it said basically these are no specific transfer, tight transfers, unlike general specific transfers which are free and states are free to spend the way they feel is the most appropriate. And keeping in mind, and many states of course had represented to the 14th Finance Commission, keeping in view their concerns. 14th Finance Commission had tried to do away with the centrally sponsored schemes, that allocation, and money was increased through general specific transfer, which was the tax devolution, which was the share of which was raised from some 31% to 32% to 42%. And of course this issue has been there for a long time. I'm not getting the legality of the issue. Of course the case had gone to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court had said no, central government has the right to formulate the centrally sponsored scheme, so there was no issue on that. But still there has been proliferation of centrally sponsored schemes, and of course one of the reasons which the central government gives is that whatever money they are getting through cess and surcharges, which you also mentioned, is going through central sponsored scheme. But would not it be better if instead of, of course, this is also a question of ownership of centrally sponsored schemes, because they're basically, designed at the center. Sometimes, of course, states are consulted. I'm talking about the NHM. We had discussion with many state governments, and some of them, of course, felt that they are just implementing agencies. They have not been consulted when the scheme was formulated. And it's also a fact none of the state has said no to CSS. So it has been there. So my point is that is it not better to have more general transfers to states than these tight transfers in the form of centrally sponsored schemes? And also another reason is that these are the areas which are within the domain of state, like health is in the domain of state. I'm just giving you one example. How do you respond to these issues?
Yeah, thank you. I think there are. This is a very complex issue, and I will try to answer in two parts very quickly. I think first issue is 14th Finance Commission and CSS. I think what 14th Finance Commission. Let me put it this way. I think the 42% was not about restructuring of CSS. I would say that 42% was basically a merger of plan and non-plan expenditure, because Finance Commission was only looking at non-plan revenue expenditure. It's the 14th Finance Commission which was the 14th Finance Commission TOR said that it was silent on whether Finance Commission should look at non-plan expenditure or plan expenditure. Plan expenditure was the Planning Commission responsibility. So since there's no mention of plan and non-plan, the Finance Commission in its wisdom decided that they would look at both the plan and non-plan. So when it looked at both plan and non-plan, it was discovered that 32% was the baseline scenario, because that was 13th Finance Commission's recommendation. And if we look at the plan transfers to the Gadgil formula, then was 6% of the divisible pool. So 32 plus 6% of the divisible pool made it 38. And then 13th Finance Commission had given a lot of tied grants. So 14th Finance Commission decided not to give tied grants. So that was around 2% of the divisible pool. So actual increase was only 2 percentage point. It's not when you take plan and non-plan. So it is not 32 to 42. I would say it was 32 to 34. And then on the CSS, Finance Commission said that CSS should be reformed, and Finance Commission suggested a framework. And Finance Commission said you really cannot have 100 plus CSS, and you should have CSS restricted to and which should be based on two considerations. One is externality and other is national priorities. So externality and national priority. So if we think that poverty is a national priority, reduction of poverty is a national priority, you can really have a CSS. But if we say that something like which can be purely done more efficiently by a state government or a local government, you shouldn't have a CSS in that in such areas. So that is something which hasn't happened, though the number of CSS has come down, but the volume of money that goes through CSS is still very large. I think that is where large reforms are needed, so that this discussion about cessation surcharges, macro stability, revenue deficit actually are addressed as a fiscal stability issue rather than scheme. I think it is very important. Finally, I would say that if we look at union government spending on union list and union government spending on state list and concurrent list in the last 20 years, union government spending on state list and concurrent list has increased significantly, and union government spending on union list has declined. So I think that's because of CSS. I think that needs to be reformed, and that's an area of reform that requires a lot more work.
Yeah, no, coming to these reforms of CSS, we had done some study on healthcare and National Health Mission. As I was mentioning that we had consulted various state governments. So, and I also mentioned that some of the states felt that they were mere implementing agency because they were not consulted. So what do you feel, how that those CSSs could be reformed to create more or to generate more ownership at the state level? Because unless you generate that ownership, it's very difficult to get the desired outcomes.
Yeah. I think CSS has an ownership at the state level, though they still complain about CSS. I think many states like it because the money directly go to the department. But absorption is low in some states because you have to pay 40% matching contribution. So if you look at, say, release and allocation, release and actual expenditure, you will see large differences, and especially the absorption is low in poorer regions. So that is where I think a lot of flexibility, I think flexible pool of CSS should increase. So there is a flexible pool, but the flexible pool now is very small. So if we are saying that it is centrally designed, for some of the cases we can have a central design, but in some cases a part of the CSS should be flexible, a flexible pool, because there is a lot of discussion about health that some of the states do not require primary health center, they probably require tertiary health care. So in that case, why CSS should not be reformed and the money flow for tertiary health care. I think that is where state specific programs can then also be financed through CSS. I think that kind of a flexibility, large flexi pool of CSS would be a way forward. But that would also require an institutional mechanism. So if some states come with a flexible design of absorption of CSS, accessing CSS fund, I think that's evaluation, that institutional mechanism should have. I think it has to be more trust based rather than center saying that you should do this and this is the way it should be done. I think that is where we also need a very robust institutional mechanism.
You know that there is a weight of income distance in this. By all the Finance Commission, of course, the weight has come down. We have done a study recently which found that it's very difficult for poor economies at the I'm telling international level, and also poor states within the nation to develop unless they have adequate human development resources, because they mutually reinforce each other. So there have been various parameters on which this formula of Finance Commission is based. Do you think that there is a room for factoring in some human resource development which can then, this thing propel poor economies to develop faster?
Well, I think, Finance Commission's devolution formula has a very limited purpose. And the purpose is to provide comparable level of public services at comparable levels of taxation. So that means basically standards of public services across the country should be same, almost same. So, but that we don't have a measure of standards of services across the country. So the fiscal gap that we estimate is through per capita income distance, area, population. Now, if we put, a specific expenditure need within the devolution formula, given that expenditure need is also more in the poorer region and already you are putting an income distance, I think it will also result in double benefit to the state. So that can lead to serious instability, the issue that we are talking about north versus south. So Finance Commission will have to be careful what best reflects fiscal need. And if we look at successive Finance Commission, they have tried to do it through the income distance rather than going into the expenditure. I think they did not look at fiscal expenditure, because fiscal expenditure also determined by how much money comes from the center, especially to the poorer regions. So I would think that existing mechanism is a very reasonable one, and how you take it forward to address the question of equity is a matter of how much weightage you give to equity versus efficiency or neutral indicator of need like population.
Okay. This conversation with you, it was Renu Kohli who was to have conversation with you, but for some reasons she had to take leave. But she had raised one question which I am putting on her behalf, not my question. She said, has not the separate carving out of shareholders' resources of defense expenditure of center undermine reduced devolutions to states? Does this aspect require correction by future Finance Commission? And would the overall reduction through this inclusion have impacted revenue deficit expansion of some or all states directly or indirectly?
Well, that was a TOR, but Finance Commission actually hasn't carved out
Yeah.
anything for defense. So that TOR also in a way was not an implementable TOR. See, but why in fact there was a seminar where I made this point when this TOR was given as additional terms of reference to the Finance Commission. It is about assessing expenditure need of the union government because defense is in the union list. Now, if we separate out a fund for defense, then the expenditure need that the Finance Commission would assess will be total expenditure minus defense, right? So, and then if we talk about devolution, then the expenditure need of the union will be much less than the states because defense has already been carved out. So I think this TOR actually had no meaning, but it created unnecessary controversy. And Finance Commission, I think, did the right thing. They said that anyway, union government expenditure has been assessed, so there is no separate fund required for defense. I think that's the best thing to do it. Yeah.
So now that next 16th Finance Commission has been set up. So what according to you should be the reform agenda for this 16th Finance Commission?
I think Finance Commission should not be taking up any reform agenda. Finance Commission's job is to divide resources between the union
No,
and
I'm
state.
saying, no. I mean to say in terms of,
No, it's not a policy-making body.
Yeah.
So I think Finance Commission should, the constitutional mandate is very clear.
No, I'm aware of that. But I was trying to say that whatever parameters it has at its, which it takes into account, like how it can divide, have a better equity in terms of vertical transfers and also for horizontal transfers.
Well, I don't want to, make a guess there, but I think 3-4 issues will become very important. I think first issue is that we are talking about an elevated level of debt and deficit, which was not the case when the 15th Finance Commission was constituted. Debt was low, deficit was low. I think Finance Commission, though the TOR is a very constitutional kind of it, is a pure TOR. Only 3 issues have been given to this Finance Commission. So it depends how Finance Commission approaches it. It can be very expansive. It can also be very restrictive. So that would depend on the Finance Commission's approach. But I think 3-4 issues they have to consider. I think what is going to happen to growth in the next 5 years, because that would determine how much resources will be available. That is one. So a very realistic estimated growth will be very important. Second, I think Finance Commission needs to give a path. I think when we say policy, I think for the purpose of fiscal stability, Finance Commission needs to give a path of deficit readjustment to a new level. It cannot be, something which was pre-COVID. I think given that there is a high debt and high deficit, what is a realizable path? What can be actually achieved? I think that kind of an exercise Finance Commission needs to do. Third issue, I would think that as far as state-specific issues are concerned, I said, Tamil Nadu share has declined. Karnataka is saying that it is creating fiscal instability. I think if there are, I think the issues that is arising if there is a decline in transfer in real terms, and that created a fiscal instability. I think how these state-specific concerns can be addressed to specific purpose, intervention, grants, etc. can be thought of. But the basic structure of Finance Commission's devolution, the beauty of it, if we look at for the last 75 years, I think the focus is equity, and I think equity will continue to remain as the focus.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm done from my side now. I'll give it to Rajat.
I think before I just open it to the floor, I also had one question. While we were talking about cess, right? Do you think the principle which the 10th Finance Commission used and saying that we have more integrated economy now, and so therefore you cannot use collection as a basis, as an indicator, can similar principle be also used to include cesses within the divisible pool?
Successive Finance Commissions actually to include divisible pool in the cess and surcharges into the divisible, you require a constitutional amendment. The Finance Commissions have said that have a constitutional amendment, but it was not done.
Okay. Right, thank you. So let me now open, Avish, please.
So you've very interesting points and really fascinating discussion. You frame this problem or the set of, not the problem, the issues as North and South. Let me throw a question at you, which I feel is more like East versus West. And that's actually related to the climate change and all the transition that we are going. A lot of the renewable energy assets that are coming up are on the western side of India, and coal is on the eastern side. How do you think this will impact some of the transfer issues as we go forward?
Let me collect two more. One from there.
Yeah, Dr. Chakraborty, yes. Although you mentioned very clearly just a little while ago that Finance Commission isn't a policy-making body, but the whole question of devolution, linking it to development and some meaningful expenditure is predicated upon whether or not we are able to achieve a meaningful delegation to the third tier also. So whenever we are looking at urban centers or clusters or growth centers, a lot of it will be achieved only if we are able to create institutions and delegate some financial power to the urban local bodies or to the Panchayati Raj institution. Now, although there is no constitutional mandate, as my understanding is concerned, for Finance Commission to actually impose. But how can this be tweaked in a manner that states actually start devolving? Because the bane of our financial devolution has been center doesn't devolve past to the state doesn't devolve it to the PRIs and the urban local bodies. So what would be your suggestion, or how this conundrum can be circumvented? Thank you.
Yeah, Professor Chadda and then Professor Mathur.
Thank you, Dr. Chakraborty. Listening to you once again after some time was pleasure. And you referred to GST being one of the major reforms, and you recall that in the 13th Finance Commission, the GST was suggested, but later implemented in 2017, so around 7 years ago. And in between came the 15th Finance Commission. Would you have something to tell us about how did the GST reform and the role of Finance Commission played out in the 15th Finance Commission? And has it really made any difference, because this is supposedly one of the major tax reforms? Thank you.
Professor Mathur. Yeah, and then we can.
Pinaki, you did a very intensive study for the 15th Finance Commission or the state finance commissions. But nothing really happened in terms of the Finance Commission taking into account the work that you and your colleagues had done. The conclusion was the same, what had been noted by the earlier Finance Commission as well, that we are not able to use it. How do we sort of get over this issue of not being able to use the state finance commissions? Prima facie, it would seem that it is very difficult to make use of the SFC reports on the ground that the powers and functions of the municipalities in the different states are very, very different. And therefore, to frame a common thread out of that to be able to be used by the Finance Commission and Union Finance Commission is a very difficult undertaking. But do you see any possibility that there is an opening somewhere which has not been exploited or which has not come to our attention? This is one question. The second question, just going back to the work that you did, and if you combine that work along with all the data which has come out of the 15th Finance, particularly the 15th Finance Commission, will show a somewhat similar issue, north-south, in municipal revenues as well. You'll find that the southern municipalities, the southern states, and also the west-east part. So there is a problem east and west, as well as the north and south, when it comes to municipal revenues. This has not been raised so far. It is not struck, nor has it raised. Do you think the time has come when this kind of a NS issue or the East-West issue in matters of urban local government finance should also be front-loaded? These were the 2 points. Just on the defense issue that Dr. Janakla has raised, Finance Commission have started making recommendations for the cantonment areas now. So there is this very minor opening that we see coming from the Finance Commissions on the defense front. That's all.
Thank you. Yeah, I think on coal and renewable and east-west division, I think it's an extremely complex issue. If we are talking about transition to a more renewable kind of a energy mix and we're trying to stop fossil fuel production, I think it has got huge revenue implication for poorer regions. I think, and it's also 3-4 states, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, and West Bengal. And it's also an issue of livelihood transition. I think, and since these states are also dependent heavily on Indian transfer, I think, except say West Bengal, I think what is the revenue implication of this transition for these states? And what is the expenditure implication of these transitions, because there is a need to provide livelihood security to these people who will be displaced and need alternative livelihood, I think needs quantification, and that hasn't been done. I think that is apart from the kind of climate sensitive expenditure that we should do for mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage. So I would think we will find an extreme inequality in terms of resource requirement and resource transition that would be resource requirement for a transition that would be required, but no work in terms of taking both revenue and expenditure side. Just looking at transition, I think hasn't been done. I think that is very important. Third tier of local bodies, PRIs, ULBs, the question that you raised, I would say that couple of things have happened. One good thing that has happened, I think we have been talking about there is no data available in the local level. I think data has become, it's not that bad now. I think it has improved, and it improved significantly. That's the first point. RBI has published a report on municipal finances. They have published a report on panchayat finances. They're trying to make it as an annual publication. And City Finance Portal has state-wise data. So I think there is a lot of data that is available. May not be very robust, but I think now that we have started getting data, I think it is also about making this data comparable, because municipal account, the way it is kept, there is no standardization, definitions are not really strictly followed. So in that case, I think like if we take finance account, we know if it is an income tax revenue, we know what is income tax revenue. But in case of local bodies, whether when you look at property tax, whether it is actually property tax or not, you do not know. So I think it is very important to have that standardization. Quality of data has to improve. On the question of PRIs and ULBs, sir, I'll also add the two questions that you raised. I think the study that we did for the Finance Commission, for 15th Finance Commission, we were looking at these SFC reports, and then we had this understanding. We started, then quantifying it, how much delay in submitting the report, how much delay in taking action taken report, etc. And then how many SFC reports have been rejected by the state government. And then we had a closer look at the SFC report, and some of the SFC recommendations are not implementable. So rejection was because it couldn't be implemented, because one of the states, it said that you should give transfers based on budget estimates of revenue. Now if you give it on the basis of budget estimates of revenue, how do you then actually readjust that with 500 local governments? Public financial management will then become a big issue. So there are two issues. One is the point about quality of SFC reports. I think there is wide variation in quality of SFC reports across states. I think there is some kind of, it's very difficult. This reform is probably next to impossible, but I think some discussions should happen. I think 14th Finance Commission started meeting, actually met all the past SFC members and chairmen, and if there were SFCs in office in a particular state, they also came. I think such consultation Finance Commission should do. I think it's more about sensitizing SFCs to do something. Second thing, I think SFCs do not follow the constitutional mandate in most states, because the divisible pool is very clear even in the 73rd, 74th constitutional amendment. In some states they say its own revenue, some states they say total revenue, some states they say the part of the tax, or some states their own tax. So we really do not know. So I think there is a need to sensitize, have more discussion on these issues. On the question of North versus South municipal revenues, sir, I think it has also got to do with the kind of prosperity these regions have. I think that itself actually impacts their revenue. And if we look at per capita property tax collection, I think it's much higher in the southern states compared to, say, east or north. So one part is evasion, other part is a natural growth, etc. I think we need to have more work on that. I really do not know, but I think this inequality is going to be more as cities become the drivers of greater, prosperity and growth. I think there is a need to look at this. On the GST and 15th Finance Commission, yeah, I think my understanding is that since Finance Commission is a constitutional body and GST is also a constitutional body with a very different mandate, I think coordination is important, but Finance Commission should not be entering into an area of taxation which is purely on policy. I think that way 15th Finance Commission, they have taken note of the development, but I don't think it has actually impacted the decision on transfer. And I thought that was the most prudent thing to do.
There's also one question from online by Mr. Abhay, and he says, do you see any merit in calculating income distance at the level of districts?
Well, I think at the level of districts, there was some discussions in Finance Commission reports, but ultimately all Finance Commissions ended up taking state per capita income because it's a devolution to the state. So and intra-state inequality is a state subject, and if so the central government giving money on the basis of districts can be quite challenging. So.
Are there any more questions? Okay, so just this round, first Shefali, then and then, right?
So thank you so much, Professor Chakraborty, for this insightful presentation. So my question is largely about North-South debate. So since there have been arguments that some states, especially southern states, like Karnataka, Kerala, they have been complaining of declining share in the devolution of taxes. So there have been arguments that these states may also make a plea that calculation of GSDP may exclude income from exports as it do not yield taxes to these states. So do you think, is it a fair ask of these states? Like, what's your view on that?
Yeah, that's a very important question. I think yes, GST export is zero rated. So the more you export, your tax goes down because you also have to give input tax credit to the exporter. So that way, it's certainly, if we look at as first round effect, certainly there is an impact. But we should have to look at the second round effect also, because when there is an economic unit which is exporting, actually it also contributes to the local economy. That has an impact on growth, that has a multiplier effect. So yes, but if we are not exporting, what is the counterfactual? That we are not doing, right? And if we look at 6 states contribute more than 50%, 7 states contribute more than 50% of India's GDP. And their combined share in India's export is 73%. So I think that argument that I am exporting, I am not getting revenue is beyond me.
Yeah, Rashmi.
Thank you, sir, for the wonderful presentation. I have a question regarding the conditions set by.
It's on.
Conditions set by the 15th Finance Commission. So they had put forward 2 conditions for the states to be eligible for intergovernmental transfers, and one of them being that from 2023 to 4, growth in property tax collection should be at least equal to the average growth in the state GDP in the past 5 years. So, given the state of property tax collection in the country, do you think stringent conditions such as these might backfire and make states and especially local governments more fund-strapped?
Okay, yeah, that was a condition which actually assumes that property tax will grow equivalent to the rate of growth of GSDP. I think that condition is it can work for first 2-3 years because states may carry a lot of arrears and all, but to assume that property tax will grow at the rate of GSDP may not. Whether it is directly related or not, we really do not know, and that condition can result in lower absorption of fund. That part, but I do not know actually what has happened. We have to look at that data. But that's a very important point that you are making.
I'm sorry, I just have to. Yeah.
No,
Sorry.
yeah.
Sorry.
If you see the RBI report, which gives information on the corporations, you see the annual growth rate on property taxes has always been higher compared to the state GST.
Okay.
So this really speaks of the irrelevance of this kind of event. Sure enough, there would be out of 4,500 municipalities, half of them may not really be able to do that, but the remaining half, particularly the corporation, they will go to the property, they will go to property taxes is high. That's what the RBI reports for every state, the overall aggregate growth.
So this itself can increase fiscal inequality among the local governments.
I just want to I think over what point Professor Mathur is making. So when we take that into account, we need to take that into account based on a cycle, because property market has cycles. So like 8 to 10 year cycle. So there could be phases when the property side market is booming. You would have high taxes, and there will be a period of 8 to 10 years when the property market is depressed. So what I'm saying, if at all we are taking into account, it should be measured on based on a cycle, yeah, rather than on a year-on-year basis, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Go ahead, please. Shefali, can you pass on that mic?
Sir, my question is regarding that recently there was a tussle between the Kerala government and the central government, and only after the intervention of the Supreme Court, some relief was provided in terms of that they were not unable to pay even the salaries. So how do you see that tussle in the context of North-South debate? Because to expect that from like a southern state facing the fiscal, not the fiscal but the revenue crisis. So do you think that the limit that is there should be state specific or the uniform one, and what should be the criteria to set that limit that a state cannot cross?
Well, I really do not know, but my broad answer would be that center and state should talk. They should not talk via courts. So that's the only answer I can give at this stage.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Now I think let me ask Shruti to close the.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. Yeah. So as we conclude this insightful discussion on the transfer of budgetary resources to states, I would like to express my gratitude to our distinguished speakers, Professor Chakraborty and Janak Raj, for their valuable contributions, and Rajat for moderating this, and all of you for an active participation. We delved deep into the complexities of budgetary allocations, exploring whether the issue is truly a North versus South debate or if a more integrated approach is necessary. Professor Chakraborty provided a comprehensive overview, emphasizing that while sharing of union taxes and grants in aid are fundamental to addressing regional disparities, there are several other criteria to be pondered upon as well. The criteria for tax devolution and grants must be designed to ensure equity and efficiency, balancing the development needs of less developed states. Cooperative federalism is paramount for ensuring that the allocation of resources supports national growth and regional developments simultaneously. A significant takeaway from today's discussion is the idea of capital grant fund mechanism to boost and equalize infrastructure growth among states. More focused, centrally sponsored schemes should also be thought upon. Besides, non-budgetary transfers should be evaluated to get a better idea of the total transfers to each of these states. in all of this, data transparency and better data availability plays a big role. So looking ahead, it is clear that we must continue the discussion on strengthening the federal structure. At CSEP, we continue to make efforts to evaluate the role of states in various areas of development, from health to climate change. We are also actively working on fiscal transitions and its distributional impacts. In closing, let's take today's discussions back to our respective fields. Thank you once again to speakers, to the organizing committee, and to all the participants. Lunch is set up in the reception area, so you may proceed towards that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.